get started. What I have for you today, I put together actually months ago, I guess, and I was going to present it to you all, but I figured I'd just hold off and wait until we were able to get closer to the budget hearings. I will tell you the data that I pulled. Some of it's a little old, like 22, 23, and it's because when I pulled it from the state website, that's what they had posted. So anything that I might say that isn't completely accurate, because I don't live in the budget every day like Eric does. Eric has full authority to jump in and correct me. I'll do the best that I can, but like you all, I guess I'm just trying to learn as I go a lot of times. So what I wanted to share with you this morning, first off, this information was pulled from the Tennessee Comptroller, our community profile. As far as Hawkins County population as listed by the Comptroller, we're sitting at about 56,000. I think it's closer to 58, but that's what our population is. And you can't see it really well, but in that very top right corner, it shows home values. And our home values, you can see, are down toward the bottom. And it looks like the biggest chunk is anywhere from the 50 to 99,000 up to the 150 to 199,000. That's where your average home values are. Now, understanding too that during reappraisals that's going to change. Anytime those home values shift, then you're going to see a change in that graph. And like I say, I know the writing is really small and you can't see it really well. I think it's interesting to note also where it says housing year built. You can see that we've had the largest span of time that houses were built in Hawkins County, 1990 to 1999, and it has significantly fell off since then. Of course, 2020 is the last year you have data. So, not as many new constructions as we have had back in the 90s, but of course our property values are kind of in that between $99,000 to $150,000 range thereabout. This is publicly accessible anytime you want to look at it on the Tennessee Comptroller's website. This pie graph I pulled off of our budget information to show just how much of our budget is broken down into different funds. I do want you to take note that general purpose schools takes up over half of our budget as a whole. Our budget as a whole operates on $122 million. The exact amount is $121,837, but we'll round to $122. We have a $122 million budget in Hawkins County. By the time you pull general purpose schools out, which has a maintenance of effort, we can't fund below unless enrollment changes, which enrollment has not been changing to decrease. It's actually been going up a little bit. So general purpose schools has a maintenance of effort. So off the rip, what I want y'all to think about is over half of your budget is untouchable. There's certain funds that we can move money around in. Your general fund, if you'll note, up at the very top right of that pie chart, is 19.1% of the total estimated expenditures of the total budget. General fund is pretty much where we live, but it only accounts for 1/5 of your budget as a whole. Does anybody have any questions about how that's broken down? From your general fund, which is the portions that we have to play with, I broke that down a little further. And you can see that public safety eats up almost half of that. Sheriff's Office also has a maintenance of effort. The Sheriff's Office is your largest public safety consumer of funds, and we can't go below it. And we know that this year we've heard that they're going to ask for some increases as well, so that's something to be thinking about. Outside of that, everything is somewhat even. General county operations at 14.9%. Your finance is 1/10 of your overall general budget, and so on. But public safety is our biggest chunk out of the general fund. So once again, what I'm trying to get us to do is we look at the budget as a whole, the $122 million piece. You zoom into the general fund on what we really have control over and what we can move around. But then from the general fund, you zoom in even more, and you see how much control we really have with discretionary spending.
It's actually quite minuscule when you break it down that way.
Thank you for doing that, Jason. You're welcome. Very well. All right, here are your revenues. So what I did is I took your revenues from everything that we gather, and of course we know that different revenues go to different places and do different things, but your local taxes make up 67% of your overall revenue. Okay, we also have federal grants and state grants and so on, fees and things like that. But with your local taxes, 67% come from your local folks, to the tune of a total of $21 million. But don't get too caught up in that $21 million because different revenues go to different places that sometimes we can't play with too much. All right, so from your local tax revenue, let's zoom in just a little bit more. 78.8%, or roughly 70, let's say 80, let's just round up to 80% of your local revenue comes from property tax. Your will tax makes up 16.6%, and as Eric pointed out, that is broken down in some different pieces from the original $20 and then moving forward to the $40 and so on. So we have, basically 80% of our taxes coming from our property owners. All right, so I broke it down again. With the will tax, you have $67 per vehicle from your local fees, because there's state fees on top of that. But $10 of that goes to public safety, which until this morning I didn't realize we had exacerbated the entire reserve for the public safety fund. And then 57, I included the original 20 plus what was passed in 2017 as one chunk. So $57 of that goes to the general fund, which we know also goes to highway debt service and things like that. But I did want to show you a ranking just for comparison's sake of where our will tax is with the entire county. Like I said, I know you can't see it really well. So what I did is I sorted it by lowest to highest, and ours is, I believe we're in the top. Let me find us here. I'll pass it up.
Yeah, it was just up there.
There we go. Okay, so there we are. So we are 49 out of 95. We're ranked well, because you have some counties that don't have a property tax at all. So of those who have will taxes, and I need to say will tax, not property tax, of those that have will tax, there are 60 of them. We are number 49, because you have to add in for the header row. So we're 49 out of 59. 49 out of 59 that have, in terms of will tax. And the counties below, they don't have a will tax at all. There's quite a few that don't. Once again, 95 counties total. And with that said, I didn't include any information from cities or municipalities. All of that is in a spreadsheet that you can find on the state website. But you can see that where we are, we're at 67. There are others that are pretty close to us, 65. They're in the 60s. But we are in the top. Of those that have will taxes, we're in the top. I guess the top 1/3, maybe. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, so your property tax breakdown. Eric already did this for you, but I just kind of threw it in a slide. One thing is incorrect. It says that 1 penny generates $119,944. That's not correct. It's changed because that's where it was when I did this. 1 penny actually generates somewhere around $122,000 at a 93% collection rate. Correct?
Correct. 122, 262, 53.
There you go. 122, 262, 53. So we're actually generating a little bit more money than we were projecting earlier. but your rate is $232.47 for $100 of assessed value. And I will tell you that I tried to compare us with other counties. It don't work though, because other counties are on different reappraisal cycles. So what happens is when you pull the entire county breakdown of how they've increased or lowered their property taxes, like if we know that if we have a reappraisal and our property values increase, our certified tax rate decreases because state law does not allow local counties to get a windfall off of a property reappraisal, right? So, for example, my property's valued at $150,000. If it goes up to $175,000, I'm not going to pay the same tax rate because state law says that the county can't generate more revenue off of a reappraisal. So what they do is they do the math. They send back a certified tax rate, which is typically lower than what it was before the reappraisal. We are on a 5-year reappraisal cycle. So when I pulled all the property taxes, it looks like some counties have lower property taxes than us. They don't. What it is, they have a lower rate, but their property values on average are much higher. So therefore, their people are paying higher bottom dollars at the end of the year, but their assessed value compared to the property tax rate is different. If that makes any sense at all. Did I do okay on that?
Did wonderful. I just want to reiterate one thing. There was a wonderful example of how the certified tax rate works with the reappraisal, but it is a cumulative whole. So the individual person may see a slightly increased or slightly decreased tax bill because that certified tax rate is on the county as a whole. But that is exactly how it works.
So with that said, once again, looking at the pennies that we have, if one penny, here's what I really wanted to get out of this presentation for y'all, is anytime we think about increases or decreases, we need to think about it in terms of pennies. So if, let's say, a department comes to us and says, we want a $244,000 increase for our department. For me, I'm thinking that's 2 pennies. 2 pennies. Where do we generate those 2 pennies from? Do we move them from somewhere within the budget, which, as I told you, when you look at the $122 million pie, we control a very, very, very small portion of that $122 million pie. We have state-mandated increases and maintenance of effort demands that say that we can't go below just about the vast majority of our budget. So when we are thinking about how to allocate funds, you find it from where your discretionary is, or you have to change your revenue stream. That's the only 2 options we have. Now, we can pull from fund balance, and I will say this, every year our local newspapers run the headline of what a deficit we're going to run for the upcoming year. I believe last year the headline was $2.4 million deficit projected. We did not run a $2.4 million deficit. Actually, we are going to add to our fund balance. But when people read that, they think, oh gosh, we're robbing from our fund balance every year. We are not. Year after year, in fact, we are adding to our fund balance. But that addition to our fund balance is a razor-thin margin. This year we're projected at $200,000, right?
100.
180. Okay.
$124.
124.
Yep.
That's fine. As long as we are not pulling from fund balance, we're good. We're projected to add $124,000. So think about that.
No.
I'm sorry.
Lose.
You're right.
Or
We're going to lose $124,000. I apologize. So basically, you're losing a penny. $124,000. You're losing a penny. If we continue to pull from fund balance, even though we have added for the last few years, we continue to do that. If our expenditures increase at the rate that they're going, and by the way, those expenditures are increasing in a lot of ways that we can't control. Constitutional office holders, we do not get to mess with their salaries. We don't. State sets that for us. Insurance rates, we don't get to mess with that. They pretty much set the standard for that. So when we look at what we're losing, you, as conservative folks working a budget, you have to be able to add more to your fund balance than you're pulling. We do balance our budget every year. Even if we balance projecting that we are going to pull from fund balance, we still balance our budget. We do better than Congress, right? Because we have to. There is a state law that says we can't pass a budget that is unbalanced. Every single year we have passed a balanced budget. Now, sometimes we balance it projected from our undesignated or unassigned fund balance, but we balance it every year. So what I want folks to understand is we're not really as bad off as we are made out to be, but if we don't really mind our P's and Q's, we're going to be in the next few years. It's going to happen. I see this tide coming. And I'm going to say this one more thing with property tax, and I'm going to move on. Understand that we did a 15-cent property tax increase. What year was that?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. That year, there was a ratio change that, guess who gave us? The state. We had no control over. The ratio was higher than it has ever been because we are on a 5-year reappraisal cycle. Personal property, which is your business tax, is on a 1 year. So they were continuing to pay higher taxes year after year while property owners in the county were getting kind of a break because our reappraisal didn't change forever, but every 5 years. So the state changed our ratio and gave private businesses a discount, which I'm all for, right? We want to help small businesses as much as we can. That 15 cents that we projected would bring us, I believe, somewhere around $2 million is what we were trying to shoot for. That ratio that the state handed us erased about $1.8 to $1.9 million of that tax increase. We did not benefit from it almost at all. Had we not done it, we would have really been in trouble. But we didn't know it was coming. It passed. We had hoped that we could start building that fund balance and do some things that we needed to do. That ratio threw us off. So right now, we are pretty much, we're par for the course, which is okay until, I heard one of my professors at Carson Newman said one time, you can only live paycheck to paycheck so long until the refrigerator goes out. This is our overview of fiscal health that was issued by the Tennessee Comptroller. There's actually one of these for every single county. You'll see in cash to expenditures trend, that line, we dropped dramatically until 2017. From 2013 to 2017, you saw a drop if you follow the line of best fit. What happened in 2017? The wheel tax. That's what allowed us to start catching back up again. So if you'll notice, overall, our revenue is outpacing our expenditures overall. We are rated as having 4% in terms of our ratio of outstanding debt relative to assessed value. There is no concern for us that the state has issued. Notice our general government debt is around $60,473,000, and that includes everything. That's all of our debt. And we are projected to pay that off, if I can remember correctly, Eric, in 2038. If we accumulate no other debt, if we accumulate no other bonds, Hawkins County will be debt-free in 2038. The number 90 million has been thrown around by some folks. That is not true at all.
Say 2038.
2038 is when we're projected. Now remember also that we have other issues that are coming up that we may have to look at, and that could change. It just depends on if we have to issue bonds or not, which we don't want to. But sometimes projects outpace revenues. We have an average, I think this is a pretty good number, of 286 days that we could run our local government if we were to lose all revenue, which we're quite a bit above other counties around us. I will say that other counties around us, to be fair, some of them don't have as much debt as we do. You can go and find this on the Tennessee Comptroller's website. Some of their debt's a little bit lower. Some of their cash on hand is also a little bit lower. It depends on how they budget it. But compared to other counties, we don't have the most debt. We do have a little bit more than some others. But we've done a pretty good job of trying to figure out how to manage it. Once again, these are all numbers I didn't pull. The Tennessee Comptroller's office did. Just as a reminder, your maintenance of efforts, Board of Education, Sheriff's Office, Highways, Election Commission, Library, and your property assessor is not technically maintenance of effort, but there are state statutory mandates that tell him or her, in the event that we have a female, that of how many employees they have to have in order to manage their office. So it's not technically maintenance of effort, but by default it kind of is. All right, here's the questions that we need to think about. What are the expenditures increases that are uncontrollable? We have that in our new budget book. We can work out those numbers. But once again, I think all constitutional office holders are getting a 5% raise. That's mayor, sheriff, property assessor, all of them, all of the constitutional office holders. What can we decrease spending on? You saw in that breakdown from the general fund and then take out public safety, and that's pretty much what you've got. I want us to think about how our expenditures are increasing due to an inflation. The last inflationary report that I saw, it's slowing. But if inflation is going up 3% versus 6%, it doesn't mean it stopped. It just means it slowed down. How do percentages of increase between expenditures and revenues compare? When we project, we always project that we're going to spend more than we take in because we project expenditures high, we project revenues at 93% collection rate. So we project it to be out of whack, but it rarely is. I will say in 22-23, when all the actuals came back, we projected a deficit, but the other night at the commission meeting, we realized some funds that were there that we didn't know to the tune of around
It was around $500,000.
$500,000.
Yeah.
So that actual number didn't come in until this last commission meeting. So think about it. You know, it sometimes takes time to get all those numbers figured out. But and honestly, when everything's said and done, we may not pull from fund balance at all this year. We don't know until actuals come back. But something to think about. At what point will our expenditures, our real actual expenditures, outpace our real actual revenue if we do nothing? When is that going to happen? If we're thinking in terms of pennies, and if we grant everything that people are asking for, which I have no interest in granting everything people are asking for, we're going to do it now. So that's what we got to think about. And the growth of the fund balance has continued to grow. If you look at, once again, line of best fit, if you look at, if we were to pull a graph of our fund balance, it continues to grow year after year, even though some who are in our community like to write articles that say that it doesn't and that we're bankrupting ourselves. We are not. We are actually growing. But unfortunately, sometimes facts don't get people's attention.
Who are you referring to?
Oh, no, I'm not you. Not you.
Okay.
No. No.
Neither of us.
Social influencers.
Oh, okay.
All right, so with all that said, does anybody have any questions for me?
Good job.
Appreciate you putting that
Thank you
together.
very much. Thank you.
And for the record, every year when that number comes out, the deficit number, I go to great pains to explain that this is projected, that this is, there's always overestimated expenditures and underestimated revenue. And I always note the previous years, how much it was actually came back at.
And we
So-
know you do a good job. We do. I know you do a good job.
You put it in there, but people stop reading it as it.
Well, I can't control that.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus.
Well, I did that too,
I
so.
understand. Thank you so much. All right, that's pretty much it. We don't have another hearing until, I think 10:10 is our next one.
Well, we already heard that.
Yeah, we did.
So 10:30 is our next scheduled one, but if we have a large gap, that's when me and Sarah usually try to jump in on some of the budgets that we have to present, so.
All righty, well
I don't mind a
pretty
break, but
much, I pretty much finished. We just had a break. Does anybody need another one? Okay, very good. Thank you.
What time do you think you need one?
You've got it scheduled 11:30.
11:30. Good.
You want pizza? He's gonna buy pizza.
I'll share it.
Huh.
so
Do you wanna go in and get started?
do I have a green light? Go ahead and.
Yeah,
You want to stop?
You're good.
Everybody would go to that third page of your schedule there, or you just flip the page number. I'm gonna start picking off that list. First one will be on page 8. And the first one on that page is County Commission. You'll see on there I've got numerous decreases. We were kind of looking at that a little conservatively. transitioning from 21 down to 14. Didn't want to trim ourselves too much too fast. Looked like the budget's coming in pretty good, so I trimmed them a little farther. Any questions on county commission? Again, just to rehash how this works, you look at those headings there at the top. We got your 22-23 actuals, just for reference. 23-24 original budget, what we passed last fiscal year. The next one is 23-24 estimates, where we think we're going to land with still several months to go. And then estimated 2024-25, next year's budget. And that fifth column, probably my favorite, shows you increases or decreases from the 23-24 budget column to your 24-25 estimated potential budget column. So, see, nothing, but, well, I'll take that back. There's a couple of increases, but the decreases outweigh the increases. Any questions on county commission's budget? Hearing none, I'm going to move on right below it, same page, board of equalization. Same thing, just a few minor decreases. Pretty small budget. Hearing nothing on it. Last one on that page is beer board. Everything same as last year, no changes. It's kind of a hard one to peg. You never know how many people are going to apply. It's not a very significant budget as it is, so I just left it alone. We don't spend it if you don't need it. Some years we have several apply, some years we have very few. All right, hearing nothing on it, if you just flip one page over to page 9, the next one is the budget committee. No changes, same as last year. Not hearing any questions on that. The next one down is the county mayor. You'll see a few changes on that. Let's see where they are. Mostly in the uncontrollables, I believe. Some salary increases, some benefit increases, medical increase, slight decrease in unemployment compensation, increase in communication, $500, and that's it. So that is basically an unchanged budget. Otherwise, the things you can't control. Any questions on county mayor? I just want to point out, if you look at the actuals to the estimated, it's extremely different. That's because we broke that up. You know, county mayor used to be all-encompassing, had the accounting and finance department in it, had county buildings, facilities manager in it, talked to audit, and they highly recommended breaking that out, being more specific to match that more to our actual job functions. And so I think the mayor kind of got some slack in the past for having such a high budget. He didn't have a high budget. He had other departments inside his budget. This is a more accurate representation of the mayor's office, his true budget. You can see it's pretty bare bones.
And just to be clear and reiterate, this includes no COLA factored into that for like office employees and things at the moment.
Not for office employees. Now his is,
But I understand that the mayor's is on the schedule that we can't.
Yeah,
we're talking about like your secretary, office staff here.
that is just her standard step
Standard.
progression. There's no COLA. Correct. Correct. And like I said, I'd be happy to work one up for whenever we decide our next meeting is, which is something we need to not forget when this concludes today or tomorrow or Friday if need be. We need to set that next meeting for when we're going to meet again for calculations for second draft. But I'd be happy to work up, various COLA options. See if any of them fit the committee. All right, not hearing any on the mayor. If you flip the page, next one, county attorney. It looks a little unique. We had, of course, the previous one unfortunately pass away, and the replacement wanted his structure a little differently. He didn't want to be a true employee. He wanted to be more like contracted labor. So you'll see a lot of changes there. At the end of the day, the dollar amounts really didn't change. We just changed from paying a salary and benefits to just paying for legal services. So. dues and memberships, things just getting more expensive, unfortunately. Postal charges, we thought that there was gonna be some savings with getting you all the iPads, and we were gonna cut down on some mailings. It just hasn't happened. Between people still wanting mailings, between post office charges, we're running over. And so I've gone ahead and tried to accurately budget that more to reflect what we're actually spending out year after year. Can't do much about postal charges, unfortunately. I wish we could. Liability insurance, that is an absolute guess. I guessed high last year and didn't guess high enough. So I tried to guess a little higher. I hope to God it doesn't come back that high. I'm not going to tell them what that figure is, and I hope it comes back much less. But trying to be adequately prepared for whatever increase you see on there. They're doing a lot more evaluations of our buildings, and they're also doing a lot more evaluations of our contents. And some of them are saying that we were underinsured. So when they up those values, premiums tend to follow.
Eric, who's the company that carries our?
Local government insurance pool, we're through the pool.
So what's that? Can you just bid out for another company to try to see if we can get a better price?
The reason the pool was created, it seems like a very normal question to ask. And I guess back in the, forgive my history, maybe in the 80s, a lot of counties tried to do that, maybe the 70s. And what happened was, and this is, all secondhand, obviously, stories told to me, but that an insurance company would lose somebody, they'd offer them some savings in year one, just to get the county's business. They get county business and find out that county business is a headache, and that they have jails, and that they have, sheriff's departments, and they have all these highway departments and solid waste departments, where you have a high probability of property and casualty damage and a high probability of workers' compensation injuries. And so in year two, you would see massive increases, or worse, what you would see is a refusal to renew the entire policy, and then they would kick out certain parts. Good luck shopping just your jail, just your highway department. And so hence the pool was born, and the logic is hopefully multiple counties wouldn't all have terrible years at the same time. So through the pool, we kind of help balance out each other's good years and bad years, and we stabilize the rates.
But we opt into that, it's not mandatory for us to do that.
It's my understanding it is optional. You could go out in the marketplace and shop around. It might be a little late in the game this year to try it now, but that is an option. I'm not aware of anything that binds us to it, but I believe there's a reason that all the counties do it. All right, and then on the same token, an increase in workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is actually looking pretty good this year, but of course that's tied to salaries, and so if salaries change, it unfortunately has to go with it. So it's just a staff there and what we think that cost will be. So those are all your changes to other general admin. Any other questions on other general admin? It's not that they're a true uncontrollable, but they're pretty close. All right, hearing none on it. We're still doing pretty good on time. Are you doing reservations now, or are we skipping?
It was, just looking for bleachers if you want to.
Okay. If you'll turn to page 17, accounting and budgeting. This one, it looks like there's a lot of changes, and that's because initially I misunderstood audit when I was doing the division of who belonged in accounting and financing and who didn't, and I brought the accounting buildings facility manager with accounting and budgeting, and it was actually more accurate to have her in county buildings, where she's the facility manager of all the buildings. So mid-year change there. That's why those numbers are coming in so under. I'd like to take credit for that, but it's not that I've saved a bunch of money. It's that I moved her into county buildings. And so on the flip side, you'll see a bunch of those increases in her side. Not her fault. It wasn't originally budgeted. But there was no new money. You guys approved that budget amendment. Just moving her from one function to the other to most accurately put her where the expenses incurred and what it relates to. So it's not that I cut a bunch of people's salaries, it's that salary moved from one function to another. You'll see benefit changes. The comp time payout, just want to touch on that briefly. It used to be embedded in the accountant's line, and that is for once annual at the end of the fiscal year. We would pay down some comp time people from hours that were getting too high. But as I divided everybody out, it couldn't be in one singular line that would touch everybody's salary without putting it in a standalone line. So that's why I moved that to that location. That's not actually any new funds. It's just moved from where it used to be all in 119 and now putting it in a standalone line. Other changes, maintenance agreements. Unfortunately, they raised their costs. The data processing drop that you see, that's because last year you all approved for us to do our accounting software conversion, and that money doesn't need to be in the budget twice. So that's giving that back to the county, pulling it back out. Any questions on accounting and budget? All right, hearing none. The next one is all the way down on page 35. And that would be there at the top, county corner, and medical examiner budget. If you look at the estimates, 23-24 versus the original budget, the salaries appear to be coming in much lower than what we had projected. That's on purpose. I mean, that was a significant change we made last year, if you remember. I believe it was Mr. Warren Bishop who came in here and talked about how the medical investigators hadn't had any increase in their funding in a long time, and so we changed that. Getting that increase, we want to make sure we're adequately budgeted. It looks like it was a little bit over budgeted, and so we're reducing that down next year. And as I mentioned earlier in the notes, that contract for forensics is absolutely just an estimate, so that number could change as the actual contract is made available to me. But overall, you're seeing a $13,481 decrease in that budget. Any questions on medical examiner? All right, hearing none. Going to page 45. And it's down at the bottom of the page, 58,600 employee benefits. Unchanged. Any questions on employee benefits? This is where I referenced earlier in the notes that the retirees' medical insurance is paid from, as well as additional policies for change of circumstance, open enrollment, death, birth, divorce, anything, marriage that may come up during the year. So we hopefully have a place where we don't have to come back to commission and ask for additional money for change of health insurance. Although if it is under budget, we will have to come back because you cannot deny somebody their change of coverage when you offer them the insurance. It's also something we've discussed with the employees. We discussed with an employee for Ms. Davis, and we've discussed one for myself. It's one of those uncontrollables. You hope they don't need it, but if they do, you have to offer it to them. You can't dictate what kinds they can have. So that's a place where we budget a few extra policies in case changes come up throughout the year, which they always do. All right, hearing nothing there, you just turn one page over to 46, miscellaneous, 58900 down there at the bottom. There's one change I do want to touch on, and that is in contributions. I know that's going to kind of jump out at you and look kind of funny. I did not increase anybody's contributions. I moved some contributions. Every year when Mr. Elkins comes in here and presents for the industrial board, he always complains about the Holston Business Development Center and the Education Foundation being in the industrial's budget. I talked to audit to see if they had any problem with moving it, but they did not. So you will see the same equivalent reduction out of the industrial board's budget and the increase to match right here. So there's no net changing in funding, just moving it from one function to another. Other than that, the only other increase you're going to see in miscellaneous is trustees commission, and you need to stay ahead of how that builds. And it looks like it's tracking a little bit high, so I wanted to boost it up just a little bit more to reflect actuals. Any other questions on miscellaneous? All right, if you'll turn one more page. I've got this on my list. It's kind of a hybrid between me and Mr. This is your litter and trash collection budget. It's relatively unchanged, small increase in non-controllables on the medical insurance. We rearranged a little money from repair services and moved it into, or excuse me, increased repair services out of gasoline. So just moving $1,000 around. The only actual increase is the medical insurance. So that budget's relatively unchanged. Any questions on litter grant? All right, I appreciate y'all letting me knock mine out so quick.
Mr. Chairman, we need to recognize that Chad Britton entered the room. I think we were on break when he arrived. Chad, do you know what time that was?
It was right after the break, so that'd have been,
It's like 9:10.
yeah, 9:10. And, Commissioner Gillum had to step out. He had a situation he had to take care of. All right, can you go?
I can, or Mr. Shanks can go ahead. Okay, my first budget is county buildings, page 13. So as Eric said, they moved my salary benefits from accounting to county buildings. That's why the county buildings budget looks like it has a large increase this year. For those of you who are on the Public Buildings Committee, all except for Mr. Alice, I presented the budget to you with increases of $15,900. Those are the expenditures that I can control. The other increases are out of our control. It's the insurance, the salary, it's the Social Security increases, and things of that nature. So, do you have any questions on that?
So the increase on line item 105, that's just where it's recognized here, where it's not been recognized somewhere else.
Yes. Sorry, step on it.
No.
That's okay. That was the new salary coming into the budget plus the step increases for myself and the maintenance manager.
Let me be clear, that's two people, not one person.
Oh, yeah.
Nice
It's
to
not
meet you.
just me.
Oh, well, nice to make the noise.
Are there any questions?
Sarah, the 15,000, I know you answered it in other buildings, I missed that one. What was the 15,000 increase for again?
It was for several different line items. We had some items that decreased, we had some items that increased. But the total overall expenditures that we can control increased by $15,900. A large amount of that is our rental property. That increased $1,800. Maintenance and repair buildings and equipment, I increased both of those lines $5,000. As I've told you all previously, we have annex building that has HVAC units that are now around 20 years old. Those are dropping like flies. I had to move money this year to purchase new equipment. I'm just trying to replace those as they go out. If it's gonna cost at least half of what a new one would cost to repair it, I replace it.
Thank you. Sarah, did you see, no, I'm getting off track. You've got a different one I'm asking about. Go ahead, you can continue on.
Where I could decrease any monies, I certainly have. Page 390, line item 399, I've decreased it $5,000. The new HVAC units at the Justice Center is gonna save me some money there because those are gonna be under warranty for a year. So I have decreased that line item.
Okay, anybody have any questions about county buildings? What's your next one?
Preservation of records, page 16. This is our archives building. We have money in our part-time personnel. We never have used that money previously. All of the employees there are all volunteer. But if we were to lose some of those volunteers, or at any point they no longer wish to volunteer there, we would have to have some money in the budget to hire someone to staff the preservation of records. Basically, I just increased for electricity and natural gas. Any questions there? Next one is on page 40 for the Parks Department. We had a slight increase there for the parks. Supervisor director is topped out. He will not get an increase in his pay unless there is a COLA increase. The maintenance personnel, of course, will have a step raise. That's reflected there. We have currently $35,000 in our part-time personnel. We have one part-time person. Currently, we're seeking another. We have put ads in the newspaper. We've put it on social media. We haven't had one application turned in. So there may be some extra money there, but just remember, we have to staff that park from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. So that's 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if we do not have part-time people, our full-time people are going to be racking up comp time very quickly.
You may see a budget amendment moving some of that part-time money to a comp time payout line so that we can get them back in compliance. So don't be surprised if you see that maybe come June.
I don't know what we can do about this. We've tried to find help. No one seems interested. It would be a great position for someone that's retired, could work weekends, could work a long shift and get that out of the way. But until we find someone to take that part-time position, our full-time employees, which we only have 2, will be having to cover 12-hour shifts.
We're only budgeted for 7-hour shifts.
We have a part-time gentleman that works at the St. Clair Park. He only works over there. He works every day, 7 days a week. He opens the park and then he closes the park that night. So he doesn't work at Laurel Run at all. So we only have 2 people staffing Laurel Run right now.
Have you seen an increase in usage of the park since we stopped charging fees for them to rent or use?
We really don't. I mean, it was always booked anyway. But that park is really used. I mean, every shelter is normally booked, starting in May until the fall. Every weekend, the shelters are normally booked. Is there any questions?
If not, it may be time to grab Mr. Shanks.
Yeah.
Can we grab it?
Yeah, if you don't care.
We're all gonna grab Bruce Shanks. He wasn't at that corner, but he.
Well, I can.
You left when you started talking. I'm not saying it because you started.
He started on.
That's where it is. That'll work.
Mr. Shanks' budget is on page 20.
just to remind everyone, you also have the questionnaire that they filled out for us. So if you want to locate what he is,
I've got 2 more copies of that printed off, if everybody else needs one. I have 1 more copy.
And then I noticed another handout. What, I don't have that. Mr. Alice has one?
that is, Mr. Palmer handed that over with.
Do you have an extra copy for my minutes?
Everybody is in almost the back. Very back.
I forgot to mention those, but I also turned one of those in for accounting and budgeting, and I think Mr. Ross, turned one in for general sessions.
I also have one for the park and county buildings.
All right, Mr. Shanks.
Okay, good morning. I guess we're probably just looking at the changes, but before we do that, just to give you all a little bit of update, because we got our numbers in from our 22 taxes. We collected 98.16% of the 22 taxes, turning the remainder over to clerk and master. And as of the end of March, we had collected 93.12% of the 23 taxes. So everything's still right where it should be as far as that goes. I don't know if Eric touched on this or not. Our interest revenue went up substantially this year. It looks like if everything stays on track, we will have made around $2.5 million in interest this year on our investments, on our idle funds, and we use CRs and ICS with the help of Tim Coley and Michelle Huffman with the bank. They come through with some pretty killer deals. The bank started wanting money again, so when they did that, we obliged them and swapped some funds around, and it's paid off this year. So I just thought you all might find that interesting.
That's the revenue I mentioned in 44110 and 151 and 156, and as well as the school gets a piece of that as well.
Just seemed like a lot, and
It's done very well.
I have another one coming due. I've been trying to get a hold of it this morning, next week, and I don't know what my rates will be on the next CD, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see. They usually do as well as they can on those. The Churchill office, real quick, it turned out to be kind of a win-win for us and the county clerk. We found a lot of people that would come in to pay their taxes would walk over and get their tags and vice versa. Had a lot of compliments on that. Seemed to have had a lot more foot traffic in Churchill. I haven't pulled the numbers, but I think we're more easily accessible, parking, everybody being in one building. That was really nice. I just want to say thank you. I had nothing to do with that, but it seems that the public seems very satisfied with the services they're getting, being able to go into one lobby and take care of their businesses. Okay, on my increases, they're pretty minimal, actually. You can see the cuts on the top part there. Maintenance and repair services, office equipment, this is our software. There will be an increase at the time of having to turn in this budget document to you guys. I had not received the budget document from my software company, and I went ahead and looked at what it's kind of been going up. I probably put a little too much in there, but I've raised that, looks like $1,000. Went ahead and cut the certifications through CTAS. They've been pretty much holding steady. I cut that in half just in case we have an increase that's unforeseen. The other increase would be under $399 other contracted services. These are for our tax notices. What I did, I took the actual amount of last year's, and she had emailed me and said expect a 15% increase. So you see a $500 increase, but it's actually a 15% from what we actually spent last year. Just to kind of make that. It's gonna go up, it's gonna keep going up, I'm afraid. Last year, we had asked to increase our, data processing equipment. I cut that down a little bit this year. We had to buy some new computers for the Churchill office, and after I did that, I had a meeting with audit. There is possibility in the next couple of years, not just us, but everybody may end up having to buy some computers or some software because Microsoft is not going to support Windows 10 anymore. And she want to make sure and point that out a year and a half ahead of time. So something we'll have to look at down the road. But otherwise, that's about it. Overall, it looks like it's cut. And all these are not mine, FYI. Some of them are from the mayor's office. $8,834. Any questions about anything?
I appreciate you working so hard to try to come in under budget. It's helpful.
We did spend a little more this year on some temporary or part-time help, but it was just some circumstances that were unforeseen, some health issues and stuff. But you know, it still all worked out. Appreciate it.
Mr. Shanks, I do, that Presto company, if they're continuing to go up in their cost, is that one of those that we can negotiate with or find another vendor?
We can. We actually swapped to Presto approximately 3 years ago because the other vendor during COVID didn't satisfy me at all, and the cost was almost the same to swap to Presto. Where the increase keeps coming in is with the envelopes and paper printing. The big difference in Presto and the other company, now they've gone out of business. It was Presto actually sends you an envelope to mail your payment back in, which has been really nice because a lot of people will go, well, they give me an envelope, you know, put a stamp on it, and they'll mail them in, which helps on the foot traffic. I don't have numbers as far as it increased, but I do feel like it has helped on getting the tax payments in. But I mean, there are probably other options out there. I would say pretty much everybody that I deal with in the association uses Presto. It's just kind of the one that I think the majority of people use. Very efficient. They get them out when they say they're going to. They kind of go above and beyond, and it's you know, they do a great job.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Shanks?
I don't have a question, but I wanna bring attention to number 7 on this questionnaire. Haven't received any full-time employees in 8.5 years, or recruited. I think they're pretty big volumes of how you conduct your office.
Well, I don't know. Just got the right people maybe at the right time, but you know, they appreciate their jobs, and they do a good job. And we've not added any people. We kind of work as a family. It's kind of weird because there's only 4 of us, so we have to. And they've appreciated the cost of living adjustments, and you all have been kind in that area over the last few years. And of course, you know what's coming, so I'll just go ahead and say it. I'd love to see a cost of living adjustment so we don't fall behind. You know, that's, I think, one of the things that we talked about when it was, what, 9% or something. We just kind of fell behind by not keeping up. But I appreciate that. Thank you, Roger.
Are you paying any overtime at all?
No, sir. They do. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, they do get comp time, but we don't get overtime.
Are all of your employees maxed out on the scale, so is COLA basically the only way they would see an increase of wages?
Yes.
Yes. We were talking about that, as a matter of fact, Monday. They are all topped out. I think when the last one came, the way it fell, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but she's topped out, right?
Everybody is now. Yeah, you had one that was still progressing, but even she's not topped out.
Okay, that's That's what I thought, that's what I understood. So yeah, the only increase that they have a chance of seeing would be an adjustment.
Any other questions for Mr. Jones? All right, Mr. Jones, thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Good luck.
If you don't care, if Ms. Davis is out there, would you send her in?
I will do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you just flip one more page, page 21, that's the county clerk's budget.
Yes, Davis.
Good morning, everybody looks real happy in here today. I can tell.
Ms. Davis, we're looking through our questionnaires.
I have mine here, so I'll be happy to answer any of those if you would like. I really didn't know how to answer some of them, to be honest.
Justin's phone.
Yeah, right on.
Okay, I will do that. The first one, areas of financial strength. Basically, all I can tell you is I've been the county clerk for 10 years. Never had an audit finding, thankfully. I looked it up for our last fiscal year, the ending June 30th of 2023. We filtered in excess of $8.6 million through my office, and every dime this penny is accounted for. So I'm pretty proud of that. So I guess that's how I'd answer number one, our financial strength. I don't know of any areas that need to be addressed other than, as everybody else is going to come and do raises for my employees. If you're a single family income and you have children, it's really hard to make it on what we pay. I don't have any increased costs in my budget other than the one or two that I cannot control, one being my software company, the company that controls our TCRS that we use every day, the one that's contracted with state. I can control that one. Nothing else. I've not asked for any increases in any of my line items unless it's something I absolutely cannot control. There is no other company to go to use for our software and hardware. Well, we could go to another company to control computers and things like that, but if they don't mesh with this state system, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Costs have remained stable. Not asking for any more in any, office supplies or office equipment or anything like that, other than, like I said, the uncontrolled costs, which is going to BIS or I3 verticals. Number 5, with the understanding that employment costs more than any other portion of your budget as a whole, describe your employment status of employment. We're stable. I've got one employee that's been there 36 years, one that's been there 32 years, the least amount I think is 3 years. They seem happy. I have asked, as most of you know, for an additional employee that I plan to pay for the majority of the cost out of my reserve fund, and I'm hoping that that will pass. We have had a pretty big increase in foot traffic in our new Churchill facility, which, by the way, I don't know if citizens up there have told you or not, they love it. We've not had one complaint, not one. Everybody loves the ease of coming in and out of that parking lot, using the drive-through, being able to go in up there and pay your taxes, and if you need somebody at circuit court, you've got somebody there, plus my office.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Is that factored into, is that benefit package factored into this budget? It's
No.
not,
It
it
is
is not on that yet, right?
Pending the results of the April 22nd meeting, though, it most likely will be your second draft.
So that would be something we'd be seeing a second draft of an increase of, and I guess a lot of that, we wouldn't really know the insurance status until that.
Position's actually filled. But that's why, like I said, we put that additional money, 5,600, so that when we have changing circumstances, new hires, whatever the case is, we have a place to go. Once the budget's set, hopefully we don't have to come back and ask for insurance money. And
So
as far as the offset of that revenue, you won't be able to see that when you look at her page. So you're gonna see the entire amount come in, but when we calculate fund balance down at the bottom, there's the amount we held out for committed, restricted, and assigned. That's where her reserve is at. So annually, we'll calculate what that employee earned, and then offset it and reduce that reserve by that amount.
Okay.
So even though it's gonna reflect in her budget, the only thing the county's actually gonna be on the hook for will be that benefit package.
And as I'm sure all of you know, when you interview an employee, you can't ask questions like how much health insurance you're gonna need.
Or no.
You can't ask things like that, so there's no way to anticipate what that cost would be.
We pay more than the health insurance cost if you ask that.
Exactly, exactly. Number 6, I think I've already asked my ability to hire and retain employees. I have great employees. I can't do anything but brag on my employees. And hiring was, the last time I hired, it was a little difficult because at that time, we had many banks here that had openings and they were paying more per hour than I could offer an employee. Something I did want to throw out there, and most of you have heard this spiel before, I just want to renew it, that, you know, like I said, we filtered in excess of $8.6 million through my office last fiscal year. We do vehicle registrations and titling, we do boat registrations and taxes, marriage license, beer permits, fireworks permits, mobile home titling and taxes, we do mobile home manufacturing decals, driver's license, gun permits, notaries, and county commission stuff. So there is a lot of stuff that goes on through my office, and I ask a lot of my employees. I'm not saying other offices don't, but my employees have to be very knowledgeable. We depend on each other to make sure we have a cohesive team. So, like I said, other than that, didn't really understand what strategies are you using aside from raises to recruit or train employees. I don't
So
know
my
that one.
question with that was, what, in addition to the money that they make, culture building, positivity, it sounds like you've got a pretty positive culture in your office.
We do.
I mean,
We do.
a lot of times people don't come to work to make low
Wages.
income.
We do things as
Unless they love it.
friends outside of work, which I hope every office can do that. I mean, I've even braved it and went roller skating with these ladies once, and that was not a very smart move on my part. I'm surprised they didn't break a hip.
You know, other examples of that might be like, positive reward programs of some sort, which I know it doesn't always have money, but, you know, you can recognize their achievements and do things like that for them as much as possible.
And we do that. We do that through various outside of the office activities that really don't have anything to do with the county.
That's what just how you build a positive culture.
Right. I have, what steps have I taken to mitigate the need to request an increase of funding? And like I said, the only increase I'm asking for is one I can't control. And the new employee, which I think is a very good offer that I'm gonna use my reserve money to pay for that
Well, the
employee.
vast majority of that money is not going to come from local tax dollars, but except for the benefits.
Yes, yes, that's correct. I have, 13 employees, 10 in Rogersville and 3 in Churchill currently.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Davis?
One more quick question. Mr. Shanks was mentioning with some changes with like the computer system and software, Windows 10 no longer being supported. Are you looking at that running into the same problem with your office?
We probably will be, yes.
How many computers are you talking about that might, just ballpark, if that might be? And
I probably have, I'm just guessing, I think I have 16 computers.
are we looking at like a end of life in less than a year on those, or possibly longer?
Audit recommends that you change those out about every 3 years, and you put them on a rotating cycle. I am due to get some new ones. You know, I'm bad. It's just like I do in my home life. I use something till it quits, and you can't do that here. So it is getting time for me to cycle, and I may use some of my remaining office equipment money to maybe purchase 2 or 3 new ones in this year. That way I'll be able to purchase some ones next year.
Okay. Thank you guys.
Do we get any revenue from, long-term camper sites, like the park in Rogersville?
Other than titling and registration, I don't get any revenue from them.
So they could have children there and use our school system. And people coming in here from out of states and, adding increase to the school, students. And we're not getting any revenue to offset that.
That's probably a question for somebody other than me, Mr.
Well,
Potts, but, you know, other than registering their cars, their boats, their mobile homes, their campers, that's about all I would do for them, yes.
I noticed all over the county where I travel, those sites are increasing.
There's a lot, there is a lot.
So I don't have an answer.
I don't really know.
I would think that the property tax revenue that would come from the landowner, that landowner would then pass some of those increases onto the rental property, the rental fee for those campers. I would imagine. If I owned one and I was renting it out, I'd factor property tax into my rental fees.
We don't have a permit for that.
There's not a long-term, there's not a permit.
I think what we're getting to now is a little bit of a state level problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any other questions?
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? And I'll renew my offer anytime you have some free time and you want to come and sit and watch what we do. Please come, especially on Friday. That's really always a fun day. Always a fun day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks. If Rusty's out there prepared to set the
I'll
please.
be happy to.
Thank you. And he is on page 18. He's on page 18 and 19, but I'm assuming we'll start with 18.
You're right there.
Okay, the only thing is adding, is to line item 52,300, 334, $100 there. That was a mapping license, for software. And the next one was $500 to 52,300, 425. And that was, next budget. For the next budget, we'll be starting reappraisal. Work. Increase the fuel there for that. And of course, I put the COLA on there also. That's the only additions to our budget.
So I'm guessing then, if we were to change and go to a 3-year cycle, then your fuel line item's gonna go up quite a bit. For reappraisal. If we were, I'm not saying we're going to, but if we were to change to, what is it, you can change to a 3 or even a 1 year?
4.
4, pardon.
They're eliminating 5 and 6.
Okay, so we're gonna go to a 4. And, or you can do a 1 year, right?
Yes, but that's another.
But I guess what I'm saying is if we
Right.
were to change, that fuel cost is gonna go up dramatically.
You'll be covering a whole lot more territory. Yes, that's correct. Then on the reappraisal side, nothing's changed, and no additions to that side.
Does anybody have any
now that you're a little closer, you filled this out a little while ago. Do you have any idea if you're gonna be turning any money back over?
Not, maybe. We'll just have to see. We'll have to see what we run into.
All right, if nobody has any questions, I think we, all we need.
Thank you all. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Judy is not gonna be able to be here. I think her deputy is coming in her place. She texted me last night.
Hello.
That's on page 12.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, just put some mushrooms instead. All right, thank you.
If you don't mind, state your name for us, 'cause
We're going to Shaw. As you can see, I'm not Judy. She's been sick, so she probably will be out the rest of the week.
She let me, yeah, she texted me last night.
She can't get away from COVID, can she?
No.
It doesn't look like you have really any major changes. Well, you're projecting a $23,000 increase overall.
The biggest change in the budget is 351 copier. The rest of those changes are in the salary and benefits. That's your one large item. She's got a $300 increase in office supplies, but $1,000 of that is usually funded from her reserve account.
So with your rentals on your copiers, I mean, it's just the rental fee going up that, or is that just because you're printing a whole lot more documents, or?
Well, we had an old map printer, and it gave us issues for years. So we finally got another one, and we're leasing it for 3 years. Then we can do a dollar buyout or trade it in, instead of being stuck with it. That ended up really being the better option, was to lease it.
So this is a new waste of equipment then, right? That wasn't from the previous year?
The map machine we have was really outdated, and we continually had to work on it.
But you already have that piece of machinery in place now, right? I think it was
Yes, we do.
budgeted in mid-year, so now it's in place.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? I'm sure you tell Miss Judy it was nice.
Will you?
She's feeling better.
That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Our next one, veteran, he's supposed to be here at 11:10. Mr. Bobo, do you care to see if he's out there?
Heard us call your name, didn't
I saw one. Good morning.
Good morning, Lord. Page 45.
So really, the only increases I'm requesting for my budget are actually line 307 for communication went up from $600 to $750, and that's actually just an increase in email services, carriers, etc. that we use now. I will probably turn in, right now it's debatable, but about $500 at the end of the year, just because my travel budget which was originally allocated approximately $3,000 when I first took the job. We don't use that much anymore. I do have training coming up for both myself and Brandy at the end of the month, and we don't know what that will cost yet, but I think once that's done, I'll still have a little bit of a surplus. So I reduced my travel budget by about $500 for the upcoming year.
And to clarify, sir, you mentioned in your questionnaire you didn't know what we meant by financial strength. That's kind of what we're looking at. Where are you saving money? Where is it?
Yeah, so savings for the financial strength will be a reduction in travel, because when I first came in the office, they were doing multiple travel seminars across the state for both annual, quarterly training. We still have to do that, but physical conferences, there's at least one a year for annual training, and that's our annual accreditation. The other conferences, the quarterly conferences, sometimes they do virtually, sometimes they do in person, but if we do it in person now, it's in our region. So we typically go to Knoxville or Strawberry Plains as opposed to going up to Nashville. So there's a cost savings there. When it comes to other things, the anticipation is I'm going to have an increase in the future for state and county systems that I have to use, but it hasn't been forecasted yet. It's stayed steady since I've been there, so the last 3 years. But I anticipate, just because of the cost of living increases of forecast events, etc., that will go up in the future.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Manning?
Thank you for what you do for the residents.
Hey, appreciate it. Happy to do it. I love doing it. Not everybody's happy with me at times.
That's a circumstance with everything.
What's that?
I said that's a circumstance with everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't
Can't
please
please everybody.
All right, if there's no other question for Mr. Manning, we can go and cut him loose.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Appreciate it. Good morning.
Mr. Manning, if Crystal is out there from Elections Office, we send her.
Absolutely.
That will be on page 11, she's out there. We have worked ourselves a little bit ahead. If not, we could possibly consider letting the states finish.
I'll see if she's there.
Do you want to keep rolling?
Yeah, please.
So, stormwater, page 42. We didn't change anything in the stormwater's budget this year, but, let me, give you a little bit of information on that budget. We may have to come back, to add some money for a stormwater manager. Our stormwater manager, Fisher, passed away this year. We're having a difficult time trying to find a replacement. I know the cities of Mount Carmel and Churchill, do you know about this, John?
Yeah,
They've hired a company to.
They're hired, contracting out to basically service, instead of paying an individual, they're just paying out a job to contract an individual.
So, the mayor and myself spoke with this company. They agreed that they could complete our paperwork for our stormwater permit, but they couldn't do any testing and evaluations or visit any job sites for people who are needing permits to, if disturb more than 5 acres of property, you have to get a stormwater permit. So this company could not do any visits to the job site, nor could they do any testing. So we decided to try to look further. I actually reached back out to the gentleman, Jim, to see if he was doing testing for Mount Carmel and Churchill. He indicated he was not. He didn't know who would be testing their stormwater. So right now, we don't know what we're gonna do about a stormwater manager.
John, you all hire somebody just for testing as well?
Not that I'm aware of at the moment.
And I
That's
asked,
what we're working on.
yeah, when I asked him about the testing, if we had all the results in the testing, we could fill out the paperwork for the permit. But we need somebody to actually go to the streams and go to the job sites where a permit's required, to make sure that they're doing everything they can. Also, with the renovations at the highway department, we've brought them into our MS4 permit, and as they are doing the updates out there, we need someone to check and make sure that all of that is regulated and not going into any of the streams. So I spoke to the gentleman that has the company that is working for Mount Carmel now, and asked who was doing their testing, and he didn't seem to know. So we're just kind of at a standstill.
Is this something TDEC?
TDEC requires it.
It's a TDEC requirement.
So they're
They
not
don't,
giving any guidance on?
no, they don't do the testing, they want the results.
I've been speaking to the folks in Morristown. They're willing to help us out, but did not have anybody that they could loan us for some testing. It could be a possibility that we could find a neighboring county that could maybe help train someone. But right now, we don't have anything.
I wonder if anybody from ETSU or Water State needs like an internship or something, if that's gonna be in their major or study.
That would be great if we could retain them, but I would hate to have to look for a stormwater manager every year, every semester.
I wonder if soil conservation office could have any resources or any connections.
We're still looking at options, but right now, we just presented the budget as it was last year. There will be monies turned in for that because we have not had an employee since late December, when Mr. Fisher passed away.
Right.
And it's still estimated a little high, not knowing, when that person might be replaced, so if they're not replaced for later, they'll even more return than what's projected here.
Any questions there? The next budget would be the airport on page 44.
Tourism, touch on tourism real quick. The little side page, 42.
I really don't know a lot about tourism. I know
Well, it's on change, it's $1,500, the same as last year.
Okay, sorry.
Let me ask about tourism. So, we have, in addition to what the county allocates, I mean, how are we making meaningful efforts to develop tourism? I know Nature's Organization does quite a bit. Are there other strategies that we have in place to try to get some tourism revenue generated?
Well, we got the grant for the Laurel Run Bridge, which is the tourism. If we okay the grant for the Kenner House, there's gonna be some tourism there. I mean, we don't actually, earmark something that we're doing for tourism, but we've got it in the back of our minds that that's what's gonna be increased from what we're doing.
And nobody, county or the city comes closest to funding tourism, that's through the lodging tax. tools. The 1,500 only pays for some promotion that we do with Northeast Tennessee Tourism Association, and then we subsidize that with another $10,000 from the chamber.
Those are my only questions. Ms. Crystal, how are you today?
I just gave you all this is for 2 elections for the election commission. Nothing really has changed on
Page 11.
my line items from last time because we had those special elections. The only thing that I went up, it was like $500 was for the legal notices because also View is charging a whole lot more now for our legal.
Well, look at me, I didn't.
Well, you are. It's, they went up, so I just, since I've got 2 elections, there's about like 8 legal notices that go out for that. But other than that, all the line items stayed the same from the last budget.
So you're showing a savings of $380,000? That's
No.
the grant, to the grant, the Howell grant.
Yeah, and, we're supposed to be getting another grant, but I'm still waiting on my paperwork for it. It's a cybersecurity grant, but that's just to help buy, like, computers and stuff for the office to update our security. Like I said, it's not come through yet. But what the printout is, it just basically breaks down and explains exactly where I spend this money for each line item. Any questions?
And so, anybody else have anything for Christmas? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all.
We're gonna, like Sarah, go back to the airport, we would have that list resolved and be on time for lunch till October.
We were able this year to show a decrease in our budget at the airport, $7,800. 7,500 of that is for gasoline. We had raised that previously. Gasoline prices are not as high as they were when we first started the 23-24 budget, so I decreased that. Also decreased our crushed stone because the project that we just completed at the airport, we had stone left over, so we have stone already located there, so when we need to use that for our driveway and such, we can just move it over. I did increase maintenance and repair on the building. Never really had enough money in there to do much of a repair. There was only $1,000 in there previously, or $300, so do a lot of repairs for $300, certainly for a building. The airport is really ran on a very tight budget. If there's not a grant flowing through there, it actually shows the day-to-day expenses at the airport and how much it actually costs to run an airport. Most of the line items in the budget, with the exception of the utilities, that would be the communication, your electricity, your natural gas, and your gasoline. Other than that, we can apply for a grant every year for these expenses to be reimbursed at 95%. So those items that we would spend money out of those lines, we could ask the state to reimburse us at 95% of every dollar that we spend. So that comes back in as revenue, and that's shown on page, in the budget book, it's usually around.
6120, I think.
So last year we were reimbursed, I think,
page 5, $2,500 coming in last year on that,
How much?
2,500.
2,500.
So that means we need to factor in the amount of the money that we can get back at 95% plus the $16,852 that the hangar rentals generate. Is the airport almost looking at, would successfully run a net positive
This year we are, this year we are, we're looking at.
So the airport is, just to be clear, the airport is not an expense, it's running net positive.
It will
It
this
will
year.
this year, okay.
We have 3 hangars that became county property, and we just signed leases of those. You all approved those leases last month, and we just signed those. They pay that money in advance, so we got 5 years rent for those hangars in advance, so those have all been paid.
So, just one comment, this is boring accounting stuff, I'm sure you're not interested in, but we can't recognize that all as revenue in the time it's paid because it's not yet earned. So we have to book that as a liability, call it unearned revenue, and then transfer it over in the years that it's earned. But it doesn't change the statement that was made, those funds did come into the county, but I can't call it all revenue. It's not until it's legally recognized and earned, and it can't be until the years of those leases are satisfied. So the accounting stuff, but just wanted to mention that.
But that doesn't take into account the county's matching part on the grant for all those,
The county does that through some pay match, and match those grants. Of course, usually those grants are at 95.5, so it's pretty good bang for your buck on a lot of those grants. Also, we did get money back from the sale of fuel.
So that's line item, excuse me, that's line item 425. So there's $30,000 in the budget to buy fuel to resell. So that's actually not an expense. We do resell that fuel. And those profits go back to the airport. And right now, our budget, or our balance is around 52,000.
I have to look, I'm not sure.
I think that's what I presented to the airport committee. Trying to remember, I have quite a few budgets, so.
The
I think
question-
it's around 52, sorry.
The question was asked me one time, how come the fuel expense and the budgeted revenue for the fuel don't match identically? Because there's product in the tank. So that's, you're not running it to zero. So there's always product in the tank to sell. So that's why your budgeted revenue doesn't always match your expense on the tank. The tank's not empty.
Sarah, did I hear you right when you said taking the grants out, this 82.5 is what we're looking at annually for the airport to run it?
So that's what I've requested. So, but normally we turn, what, if you would think 70% of the budget back in most of the time?
I mean,
If there's not a grant in there.
there may be another fuel purchase between now and the end of the year, but you see your fuel line was at 37.5, right now it's at 18,598 projected ending. You got that $25,000 in there, the capital outlay, we use that sometimes for various grant matches, but right now we haven't. Now, if we get another one of these here before the end of the year, we may.
But this is what we could expect. So
Yeah.
you're looking at $226 a day on a normal year. And then not
I didn't divide it out, but I'm assuming you divide that by 365, yeah, it's a fair
and not
statement.
including businesses or, industries and businesses that might fly parts in, and they use that in the decision making on locating here.
So are you including the $30,000 for the gasoline?
I took the 82.5 and divided by 365.
Okay, so 30 of that is gasoline that we're reselling, so that's actually not an expense. It is an expense, but we're gonna turn around and get
Yeah.
more than that back. The maintenance or repair equipment line, we normally don't spend any of that money. I have projected we could spend possibly $1,000 this year. 90% of the time, that $8,000 completely turned back in. The reason we put that there is because that equipment, anything that we have there, if we need to work on it, it would be very expensive. I would have to stop, ask the budget for a budget amendment if I didn't have money in the line item to do it before I could even request a purchase order to get it repaired. So you have to have money in the budget. Doesn't mean we're always gonna spend it.
had people ask me, and I've talked with Nancy about it, are flights coming in and out, are they recorded?
They are not.
Pardon?
They are not recorded.
So, do we know the percentage of flights that are directly influences business, or tourism, or just private recreation?
We do not know, they're not recorded.
Does the FAA require us to record them?
No, they do not. My grandson have a friend that is a pilot. He comes to hunt on our property. 2 weeks ago, he called and said, I'm flying down. He stopped at the Rogersville airport. He fueled his tank up, and he came down, flew over our house, and flew back to Gray. But people do, coming from other places, stop at that airport.
There's a website online that you can see every flight that comes in to the airport daily. There's got at least 2 or 3 that you can usually find on any given day. And if that's the case, if they're landing here, is it assumed that they're buying fuel?
You could assume.
And our airport's not
You
big
would think,
enough to
why
hold.
else would they land?
Right. Our airport's not big enough to hold large planes that can carry,
Right.
stop and refuel or stop and go. So, the assumption would be that they're buying fuel from us if they're stopping at the airport.
And just like Mr. Barker touched on previous meetings, these companies, when they're looking to come into, Hawkins County, just like a checkbox, when you're buying something online, you go for what you want, what's available. Well, if we don't check an airport, if they don't check an airport box and our name don't show up, then
We don't show up.
exactly. Yes, the airport may be small, not as big as we all would like, but it does put our name out there for these companies.
If we do not have any grants at the airport, and right now we are at, the point that we have fixed all of our issues. So, after this drainage study is completed, and we do not have to have a retention pond for the drainage, and it's a possibility that we don't. The next step in line is building hangars.
To rent out.
To rent,
Yes,
yes.
or an income for us.
And there's a list of people
That
like
want
to
to
rent.
yes.
That is our next step.
And we have small business, some of the restaurants, some of the owners have planes, actually fly in food for the restaurants. So they can have fresh seafood, or they can have fresh whatever from different areas, so.
The gentleman that was here yesterday that signed the lease for one of the hangars that recently became county property, he said a businessman wants an airport. Did he not, Eric? You were in there with me. Eric was notarizing his documents. He said, I have to fly to different areas. He is an electrical contractor, and he works out of state a lot. So he uses our airport for his work.
Okay, next.
All right, any other questions about the budget? I think
It's lunch.
that's everyone, so we'll go ahead and break for lunch. We're gonna start back at 1 o'clock for soil conservation.
How did you know? Oh, is he there?
As soon as the pizzas get here, they'll be